Jim Park. Now we call to order the regular meeting of the Board of Commissioners on March 6th at 5:15. Joanne.
Commissioner Ernst, Commissioner Engel,
Here.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright.
Here. And we'll do any changes to the agenda. Nope. Okay, public requests. We have any public requests tonight? Any online? Nobody's raising their hand tonight. Okay, we'll do approval of the minutes of the previous board meeting held on February 21st at 5:15.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Joanne.
Commissioner Ernst,
Yes.
Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, regular business, Ocean Strand Lift Station easement, Brianne.
Commissioners, your agenda packets on page 5 is a memo I wrote about the Ocean Strand easement. Couple of things that I think the board should consider, and we will hear from an attorney representing the developer here shortly too. Just a couple things that I think we should consider. If this is something the board wants to do, is that we talk about legal fees associated with this request would be covered. Installation would not require any expenses on behalf of the district taxpayers. I think the capacity of the lift station should be made to so that it can, if we had any future developments at Ocean Strand, it would be made so that it could handle those future additions like restrooms or any sort of concessions or something like that. We do have Ryan Abrams here representing the developer, and he can answer some questions. What this boils down to is that they're developing a property. There's 28 homes down there on the barrier island that are not on the city water. They're still on septic, and they'd like to get them moved to that. So they've tasked this particular developer with adding this lift station to their property, which is a much smaller parcel than Ocean Strand. So the developers come to us and said, hey, can the city put their easement on your property instead of ours? And can we help make this happen? So he's here tonight to talk about that and answer any of your questions.
Thank you. If I may approach, I have a few demonstratives that might be helpful. Okay.
Oh, good. Oh, no worries. I know where it is.
All right. So just what I gave you is just a copy of what is on public record with the city of Boca Raton. It just shows where there's currently gravity sewer lines in this area. And this is really the last community, the community that my client owns property in, is really the last community in Boca Raton that, to my knowledge, that does not have gravity sewer. And those homes in that neighborhood are on septic. So my client purchased 2 properties in 2021, which are waterfront properties on Lake Wyman near the Intercoastal, and it's 910 and 911 Northeast 24th Street shown on there. This about combined, it's about 1.3 acres. They're just looking to put 2 single family homes there, and the city does not want us to put septic back in. We've already removed septic, and they don't want us to put it back in. So we are very interested in making an opportunity out of this situation to bring sewer to this community. And we think it's an interesting opportunity for collaboration between Boca Raton and the Parks District as well. So we have kind of been fighting with the city for, not fighting really, but we've been speaking with them and negotiating with them for some time about how to move forward. Recently, we finally came to some framework with them on how to proceed. And what we're looking to do is put a utility easement on the northern boundary line of the Ocean Strand property. And there would be a 20 by 20-foot easement for a lift station installation. And the lift station is really all it is it just brings up sewage to the surface so that it can then use gravity to flow towards the main line, which said A1A. Having this installation there will basically bring access to the community that is on 24th Street nearby and the community right next to that. It will also provide capacity for, let me rephrase it. We are interested in making sure that it has capacity for any future projects that the Parks District wishes to have on its property so that it can be mutually beneficial. Now we understand that nothing's free in this world, so my client's happy to pay for that, right? This is a public installation. However, my client is volunteering to pay for the easement. They will build the lift station. They will install the line, and the city is going to enter into a cost sharing agreement whereby, and this is common with developers, once the lift station installation is complete, we would then assign the easement to the city for future maintenance, and the lift station would become the property of the city. We would build it, but it would be for the city. The city will reimburse my client approximately 75%. That doesn't include engineering costs. So at the end of the day, it really comes out to roughly 31% of the costs my client's going to bear just for the construction alone. That's not including what we would pay for the easement itself. And I believe you all are in receipt of the email that I sent, which contains an initial general offer of 15,000, but that's obviously negotiable. That's for the easement itself. And obviously that presumes that there's interest to move forward in this, with this idea. So what I'm hoping tonight is to get kind of like the board's, gauge the board and see if there's interest. And if there is, then we can really start putting details together and I can start moving forward with this process. Be happy to answer any questions.
So where would the new easement be exactly?
It would run east-west along the northern boundary line, about 10 feet wide.
And they'll abandon the current one that's under the asphalt pathway? There's like a utility
Well,
easement.
the thing is, I think there's a water line there, right?
Yeah, but they talked about abandoning that and moving their utility easement over to that side. I just wanted, that would have to be part of this because that would help for future
Yeah.
development.
I haven't had that discussion with Chris Helfrich, but if you have you had that discussion with him? Oh, okay. This might be an opportunity to do that. If that's something the board wants to make sure of, I can try to see if that can be included in this one packaged deal that we're trying to push.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams, for coming by this afternoon. As I understand the lift station, it's designed to, it's not going to be a gravity feed up to the top. It's actually going to be a pump of some sort that'll push everything uphill, since it is an uphill process. The 20 by 20 lift station, is that going to service just the couple of homes that you've got there or other homes in that development?
Right. No, it would serve the multiple homes in the development, about 20 homes roughly.
The question that I would ask is that designed specifically to service that area, or is it the lift station, the 20 by 20, sufficient to be able to provide service to us and from whatever comfort stations there we might have there on our property?
So we don't have any details on that yet, but in principle, I imagine, and I'm not an engineer, so we do have an engineer on the project, but if that is something the board wants to make sure of, we can address that and we can make sure that in any plans that we have to develop, because we're going to be the ones responsible for the plans. The city doesn't have plans right now for this particular project. So we would basically ensure capacity, and we can bake that into any agreement that would be forthcoming.
Thank you.
Sure.
Sam, is there any legal issues that we have to consider in this process?
May I respond, Madam Chair? Not yet. A lot will depend upon the language and the description of the type and kind of easement. This is slightly different than the easement that we've had some discussions about in the recent past with regard to the a temporary construction easement. This is a permanent easement. This is in the ground, permanent, legal impact on the land itself. It's land owned by the district, so the answer is you're giving the easement. But the item, as I understand it, the lift station would be on the district's property, but it will be eventually owned by the city. Is that correct?
Yes,
And
the easement would be assigned to the city upon completion of construction.
the easement that we give to that the district potentially gives to your client would be assigned to the city.
Right.
correct? Yes. So a lot depends on what the district contemplates with regard to this issue. It should be at a no cost situation to the district. And liability obviously shouldn't be projected in any way, shape or form to the district as well, including the costs and expenses associated with the installation and future maintenance.
Yeah, and I would assume too that the process, if there's any legal expense that is incurred by district, we would be reimbursed for that. That would be my preference. I would want to be certain that having the lift station on this property is sufficiently large enough to cover our needs if we were to go along with that. And then I understand that the city, once this is complete, the city takes over, since it's their project, they're going to pay for the installation and the right of way. And then they're going to be the ones that are going to maintain that area right there with shrubbery or whatever it is to cover up that piece of equipment there.
That's correct. My understanding is that once there is a utility easement granted and it is assigned to the city, they have their own requirements in terms of what kinds of landscaping can be maintained. I suppose, I think, for example, large trees can't be planted right over it. So there would be that to consider as well. Just to be forthright completely, I've dealt with that on a separate project. So if there's existing trees, obviously those would be protected, but just for future. So the answer is I think the landscaping obligations, as long as they're not infringing on any kind of on the water line or the sewer line, it wouldn't be a problem for the district.
Is it necessary to have a generator for, when there's power failures? Because I know in a lot of neighborhoods, I see generators by the lift station because we do have periodic outages, especially in the summer when we have weather issues. And it would seem to me if we're servicing that number of homes in there, that might be something that the city might want to consider. Wouldn't affect us so much at the moment, but to me, that would seem like a practical situation for them to consider.
Sure, I've made a note of that, and I'll make sure to address it with my client.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam
Sure.
Chair.
Susie, go ahead, and then Craig, and then Steve has his hand raised as well. So Susie, go first.
Should we encounter, we decide that we're going to do this, but in the future, we find out that we're going to do something more than a couple of restrooms on our property. Is there a way to modify that particular lift station to increase its capacity?
So more of an engineering question, but from a legal standpoint, as long as the parties are agreeable, that can be done. We can include language that your council can make sure to include that would address that contingency. It's a good
And
point.
I mean, is there any possibility when you go in there or the contractors go in there and start digging around, they find out that this is an archaeological site, more than what
It's
we've
been
already
mentioned to
found?
me as
It-
possibility. If that were to happen, it would, I suppose, put a hard stop on this whole concept. Yeah, so that there would need to be some preparedness for that possibility, I think. Yeah. Sure.
Thank you. I mean, it seems like an interesting concept, but just to kind of recap, so I understand this, your client bought 9, 10, and 9, 11. And you want to put what you call the lift station in on A1A on our property, a 20 by 24. And that also will include some kind of underground work, all 10 feet wide along the property line from Lake Wyman, basically, that area all the way up to A1A.
It would be, there's a property reflected, I think, as a 900 property on that map you
Yes.
have. So it would be the eastern edge of that property is where there's currently an easement and it would need to connect to there. And the easement itself would be 10 feet wide, but the line is roughly 4 to 6 feet wide. The sewer line,
The sewer line will be 4 to 6 feet wide.
roughly.
Okay.
But so the easement area is 10 feet wide. That's
So
what
we're
the
talking
city-
about those big sewer cement pipes. Putting that in through that area.
I don't know what material exactly it is, but it is a gravity sewer line, although that's what it's considered, but it will be hooked up to the lift station. And just to be clear, also the 20 by 20 foot easement for the lift station is not going to include, like, that's not the size of the installation. The installation's like really, it's 10 by 10 roughly from what it's been described to me, but they have the larger area because there's a cement base
Yeah. so-
that extends out a little bit.
So the lift station part of it is in the front of Ocean Strand.
I believe so.
But a lot of the big heavy lifting work is along the property line to dig that all. I mean, there's a lot of stuff there.
Right.
I mean,
There's like a lot of trees and
Right.
such. Right.
so all that has to be kind of removed.
Right. My preference initially, my thought was it should go where that current road is, Ocean Strand Road. But it was brought to my attention by Mr. Helfrich through their city attorney that you all are interested in moving that to the side. And so that's why they were like, it has to go on the side. And we were aware of the amount of vegetation. So obviously that would need to be taken into account.
Okay. I kind of defer to our executive director to kind of figure out what the best opportunity is for everyone.
Yeah.
Location, place, all that. To me, it sounds like a lot of work, and God bless you and your client for wanting to do this. I'm
Right.
not sure you exactly would want to do it, but I think from a parks perspective, it's beneficial. And from a community perspective, and you're saying ultimately the rest of these homes will have the opportunity to connect into that lift station.
Yes.
And
Yes.
And so this will basically include some kind of, as you build the structure out,
Mhm.
for us, we would need some kind of connection capability closer to the Lake Wyman area. Because if we're going to ever build a restroom or something like that, it has to be built out at the same time. So I want to make sure that's included in the agreement,
Yeah.
that there's some kind of, our ability to plug into this thing is easier than just a lot of piping. And then the second thing is,
Understood.
I don't know how you will, is it electric you need electric at both ends? So you're going to need a lift station really to push and bring it up as well?
Should have had
Maybe.
my engineer with me. Cause
That's
no, that one is a little beyond, a little over my head. Not sure.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
the only thing I would ask.
I'll make a
is
note though.
that if you're going to do electrical, and I'm sorry to complicate your project.
No, it's okay.
But on this site for sure, underground electrical lines is essential from my perspective. I'd like to avoid having any kind of cable lines or lines above the ground.
Fair enough.
So. But I defer to working out some, amicable agreement with the city. Everything has, from our perspective, we're guided by our city to get the appropriate size, structure and everything, whatever it is. We don't want to inherit something that that we'll have to redo later.
Okay.
That's all. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. And is there, maybe this is a question for Ms. Harms, are there current plans for future development of this property that we could tie into this process or?
Only in our minds, not on
Okay,
paper,
All right.
but
sure.
we'll talk.
Yeah, sure.
Steve, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I just want to ensure that that when this lift station is built, that concurrently we are connected to both the water and the electrical aspect of it. Should we decide at a future date that we need to take advantage of it so that we don't have to do it in two separate stages.
Understood.
Okay, and that also that your client will cover whatever installation costs that would be incurred.
So on that north end on the property line, there's actually a lot of Brazilian peppers and Australian pines that we actually did not remove as part of our project. So maybe because you guys are doing that easement along that property line, you could go ahead and remove those Brazilian peppers and Australian pines for us as part of it.
Roughly how many are there?
I'm not sure.
Oh, okay.
I mean, in between the road and the property line, we'll have to see. But that would be a big help for our property. And then the city can continue to maintain keeping those removed from the property. But again, those were buffers for the property for the houses behind, so we'd have to figure something out there.
Yeah.
Maybe replace them with something nicer and not invasive. But again, that can be worked out, I think. Bob, you had a
I think as everybody has indicated, we like the concept. You know, I certainly think it's a value added to our property. The only concern I'd have is in making sure that, and we're not talking about putting any major structures over on this property. It's going to be mostly a passive facility. But I want to be sure that, as Steve said, we have connectability to that, and also that we wouldn't overload the capacity by us coming on there, which I think if it's just a comfort station, it probably would be okay. But I think it's a nice community project because of getting the environmental cleaned up with getting rid of those septic tanks. I think
Right.
is probably what the cities, they got you by the short hair in this process. So
Sure do.
I appreciate the fact that we're going to benefit from that in the process too. So
Very
I
good.
think it's a good idea.
Thank you.
Is that it, everybody? So do we need a motion to move forward with?
If I can, I would suggest that given the presentation by counsel for the applicant and the discussion from your colleagues today on the dais, it might be useful to adopt a motion to authorize and direct the executive director and your general counsel to open discussions and negotiate a potential easement for a review and consideration by the board at some future time, particularly considering the items and matters discussed by each of you this evening as part of the record tonight. That would be a motion.
Motion. Exactly the way he said it.
Thank you.
Second.
And cost neutral, yes.
Neutral.
Any further discussion? Nope. Okay. Joanne.
Commissioner Ernst? Mr. Engel?
Yes,
Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang? Yes. And Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
On to number 2, FAU restroom proposal. Brian.
Commissioners, just some updates here, and this came up at our last meeting about the restrooms over by the fields that we rent, and the restrooms are not, they're overwhelmed by the amount of foot traffic that goes through them when we have games and playing over there. So we got some information from FAU. Basically, they have a contractor that goes out there between 6:30 and 7 every morning to clean those restrooms. They've submitted a work order to address the potholes in the parking lot. The restrooms were fully painted 1 year ago. The parking lot lights are going to be upgraded to LED lights during the spring break of this year. So that's right around the corner. And they've offered us that additional cleaning can be accommodated, but it would be an additional rental expense for us. Basically, they would provide staff to empty the trash, clean the restrooms, restock supplies from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays and Sundays, 22 hours per weekend is what that comes out to. And the total for that would be $1,491.96 at an hourly rate of $15.65. So that's kind of where we're at right now with it. If we wanted to add on additional cleaning, or if we want to see if they can address more through student services and give it a little bit more time as they're working through some of this. They definitely are responding and addressing some of the things that are out there that need to be fixed. So that's where we're at with it.
Madam Chair, I think the fact that the heavy activity that we put on that facility over the weekend is probably the times when most of the complaints occur, because the rest of the trash cans are not being turned over, cleaned. And I would have no problem with the extra expense, provided that's, it's limited to those times when the active recreational season is going on and we're using those facilities. So like in the summer, we're not on those facilities. Some of the holidays that when school's out, where we're not using those facilities, just so long as we're being prudent with the time that we're paying that fee. Yeah, I know that it does look a little better with the painting, but I still think there's some other issues that came up, and I think that student services is on the case now as far as filling in those potholes, which I was there this weekend, and I've got an SUV. You can almost put my SUV in one of those potholes, and not to mention the liability issue that we have, since we're using those facilities and we name them as additional insured. Somebody step in there and break an ankle, or an adult fall and injure themselves, I think we would have some liability associated with that. So student services, when I spoke to the VP of student services, that, they're on that case, and hopefully we'll get the potholes completed and go from there. So I would support that additional expense.
What about during the week when the girls are there though, practicing? Have you talked to Christy or anybody who uses those fields during the week and how they are? Do they need an extra cleaning in the evening, like before the evening practice, or no?
I don't know that, but if they're doing this if they're cleaning it at 7 a.m., there shouldn't be any issues by the time the kids practice. Now, I know that a lot of the students, that's some student parking over there, which is the reason why student services is involved in that. I think I think the issues really is during game times when everything is really busy over there, and then you have competitive games going on there, because there are games going on there both Saturday and Sunday, and I think those are times when the place looks the worst and needs some attention. So
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, because if I was practicing there or coaching a team and having to use those restrooms, I wouldn't want to use those restrooms during the week. So I just want to make sure that they are cleaned enough for them during those times.
yeah, I mean, it has not been mentioned to me as to the complaint, but I gathered from Christy that it was on the weekends when the activity is heaviest. But if they're doing this every day in the morning, by the end of the day, when everybody leaves, and they'll get to it the next morning. So I can't imagine, and not to put this blame off on any of the participants over there, but some of them, I'm not sure that some of the people who use it are necessarily neatniks anyway. So
Otherwise from her during the week. Yeah. Susie, you had anything?
And that number, that 1,000+ number, is that monthly? Okay, so in the agreement to, if we agree to do that, and they're not keeping up with their end of the bargain, can we withhold the amount if the restrooms aren't cleaned and they don't, they're not sufficiently maintained?
Yes, I would let Sam weigh in on that, but I think we could just write an addendum. If we're going to start paying this in addition, we can write an addendum to that effect. Make sure. And we can also see if we can do it by the weekend instead of by the month. If there's 3 weeks, 1 month, or 2 weeks, 1 month that we don't want to pay for a full month of extra cleanings, we can ask them if we can break that down more.
Well, I can tell you that by my wife's standards, those, whether they clean them or not, they've never been at a good standard. So I don't know that this adding, another cleaning set, unless you have clear standards for FAU to manage it, is going to be any better. So if you're going to write an agreement to do this, in the base case, I think FAU should stand up and start cleaning the bathrooms and take care of it, but I recognize they're not. And we want to have clean bathrooms. So I'd like to really make it very tight on the agreement of what are we asking for and what are we paying for? And if we don't get it, we are not paying it anymore. And FAU needs to be accountable for what they're doing. We pay a lot of money for them to maintain the fields, to take care of the bathrooms and to take care of the parking lot. And if they don't do that, I think that's wrong. I think they should, those nets should be changed. I assume they were changed. That's what we talked about when we first went over there. And if the facility is not at a proper standard, they need to be put on notice. And it's just not, it's just the way it is.
Okay, do we need a motion for this here, or are we all kind of in agreement?
Madam Chair, I would suggest a motion of some type which would give the director some authority and direction with regard to particularly an addendum or some other mechanism to maintain the issues you tried to just describe. This way she'll have the authority to move it forward at that basis.
So I'll make the motion that the executive director and council negotiate an agreement with an addendum agreement to facilitate the restroom, additional cleaning at the restroom on Glades Road bathrooms with specific standards that both parties can mutually agree to.
Second,
Joanne?
Commissioner Engel,
yes.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright. Motion passes.
A approval of payroll and invoices, Mr. Ernst.
Make a motion for approval of payroll and invoices in the amount of $282,352.21.
Second,
A little delayed. Joanne?
Commissioner Ernst, Commissioner Engel,
yes.
Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Yeah. Reports and discussion items. We'll go first to Executive Director Harms.
I shared with you all in an email that the story walk at Patch Reef is up. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to go check it out, but it's really, really cute. The story is very interactive. It takes up about a third of the loop over there. And I think the partnership with the library is going really well. They've replaced at Sugar Sand and Patch Reef in their Little Free Libraries, they replaced over 785 books. So that's 785 books that have gone out to the young readers or adult readers even in our community. So I think that the partnership with the libraries has been great. So I'm excited about that. And if you get a chance to go over there and check out the story walk, it's really, really cute. That's all I can say. It's very cute. We just received the design work order for the all accessible playground at Patch Reef today. So Melissa and I will take a look at that and evaluate it. And hopefully we'll have that on the agenda for next week. And then I also spoke with John Holloway about the agreement for the tower. As you guys know, City Council approved it last week. So the tower is moving forward. Mr. Holloway said we were good. He's going to get that agreement back to me and we'll have that on our next meeting agenda to approve. We'll hopefully have the work order for Patch Reef. And then we also have a new science exploring exhibit agreements to talk about. And that's all I have.
Mr. Gorin?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Good afternoon again. Good evening. Just a quick note to you, the legislature begins its session tomorrow, if I'm not mistaken, is the commencement of the session. You might have noticed that there are some bills this session already, one of which was adopted and signed by the governor regarding special districts. Disney World is a special district. Reedy Creek is no legally different than this organization, just FYI, in the context of the legal texture and the methodology by which it does business. It's not significantly legally different. The end result of which is that there are several bills that have been filed, pre-filed. Session opens tomorrow. We'll keep our eyes on those types and kinds of districts that might have some impact on this district, as we have in the past during the session. There are also some bills regarding financial disclosure that affect local governments. We're not sure that it includes special districts. You may remember the last 5 years, the legislature has sought to have folks who are on special district, strike that on county and on city governments to file a Form 6 versus the Form 1. The end result is that local governments are being looked at carefully, as are special districts. There was another special act that was modified this past week with regard to one of the Coral Springs districts, also a special district under state law that again are in the sights of the legislature. to the extent that we can keep our eye on that during the course of the session, we will do so for you. As well as any other impacts on either chapter 112 governing ethics, which again is an open topic this session. We will keep you fully posted during the way the session goes. At this point, though, the Disney example is a very good one of what the legislature at least has in mind regarding control. I mean, you are elected officials. The Reedy Creek District was, as I recall, was elected. I'm not sure about that, but you have a very different texture than others. Some districts are all appointed. This is not an appointed district. You're elected officials. You have a specific texture legally under Florida law and the Constitution that is different. We hope that that'll be recognized in this session as well. We'll keep you posted. If you hear anything on your end that requires some attention by us, we'd be happy to integrate that discussion further. But right now, everything is open for discussion when the legislature goes into session, as you know. That's all I have. Thank you very much.
I have a question.
Yes,
I
sir.
think Commissioner Engel brought it up at our last meeting about any legislative changes that would cap our ability to raise our millage rate. Is that something that's?
We're looking to see. I've not seen anything yet in this session. There are 400 and something bills have been filed so far, or even more perhaps. That were pre-filed. The answer is that's an issue that's on our radar screen from last year as well. Yes, which would cap districts' ability to tax and or assess or both. Correct. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Steve, you want to go first?
Sure, but I got nothing. I'm just sitting here waiting to wait out my 5-day quarantine. And I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Hopefully in person.
Okay, thank you. Yes. Craig.
Madam Chair, just thank you. I think most of the things have been covered, and I assume at the end of the month, we'll be covering more about Boca Chica overall. And I'm glad to see Merv is here. He can help, guide and shape as we develop our capital budget for next year, because I think there's a lot of things that will kind of tug and pull at all aspects of it. And we gotta have to balance what we really can do and how we will develop the east and the west of Boca Chica. So I think it's a bigger picture thing about the overall community of where we're going with everything. So I encourage us to think about all the things that we're working on, or the district's working on with the city, and probably talk to the city. What would they like to do? So that's all I have.
I'm just happy to be here. I had nothing to comment. Thank you.
I have a quick question, Brianne. What's the status on the maintenance facility at DeHornley? Because I saw some trucks over there when I went by, where I think that they're going to build the facility.
I'm learning that they were getting some of the materials together, so I don't know if that was the contractor out there or not, but I think they just got it approved and executed the agreement, so they're going to start on it. But I think the timeline on it is a little bit lengthy. We're still out from quite a bit. Same with the tower, but the tower is going to start too.
The Walkers the last time we had our meeting, or no? It wasn't, right? Ocean Strand is open to people. Yay! We haven't had our ribbon cutting yet, but as soon as the city approves our signs.
We're gonna wait on the main sign. I think that's the last thing that we're waiting on, but hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we'll have everything out there and we can have a ribbon cutting. We have some schedules to work around, but we're gonna work around everybody's schedules and make it happen.
The only thing I wanted to bring up that was we really need to schedule a city council joint meeting. I'm hoping to have something on the books before summer breaks, because we always try to get something and they're like, no, nobody's here for summer, or people are away and this and that. So if we can really put pressure on them to schedule something in April or May after the new council member gets on, I want Brianne to really push that if we can.
I reached out to the city clerk to find out about that. I know they're waiting for the new council member to get seated, and that's at the end of March. So as soon as I hear from her, I'll keep everybody updated.
Okay. We really need to have that joint meeting. I feel like it's been like a year and a half, like a really long time, at least. With COVID and everything, yeah. So I think we have a lot to talk about with them. So It'd be good to have that, especially with the new council members that will be on. I think that'll be good. So. Steve,
Move to adjourn.
okay. Anyway,
Commissioner Engel,
Yes.
Commissioner Reynolds, Commissioner Vogelsang, Commissioner Wright,
yes,
motion passed.
we are adjourned.